Have you ever noticed how no one questions your strength until you finally break? They assume you're fine because you carry it well. They see your calm and mistake it for comfort, never realizing the quiet battles you fight alone. But what if I told you that staying strong isn't about holding it all together? It's about knowing what to let go. It's like a dam holding back a river, strong, still, unshaken, until the cracks appear. Not because it was weak, but because it held too much for too long. Or think of a tree rooted in a storm. It bends, it groans, but it doesn't fall. Not because the wind is kind, but because the roots run deep. That's the kind of strength no one applauds, because they don't see it until it's gone. Because while they're praising the loud and the flashy, you have a choice. Prove your strength to the world or protect your peace in silence. And when you stop trying to appear strong and just are, that's when everything shifts. That's when you rise. So how do you avoid breaking under pressure without losing who you are? Stay with me, because the final mistake might be the one quietly draining your strength right now. Let's get started. Number 1. Basing your worth on how others treat you. Let's talk about a mistake so subtle, most people don't even realize they're making it. Basing your worth on how others treat you. You wake up feeling good, but one cold glance, one ignored message, or one passive comment suddenly changes everything. When someone praises you, you feel confident. When someone overlooks you, you question yourself. You start to shrink, second guess, and wonder, did I do something wrong? It's not strength, it's emotional slavery. Because if your peace rises and falls based on someone else's approval, you're not in control. They are. Here's the truth. When your self-worth is tied to how others respond to you, you hand over your power. You start living for applause, adjusting your tone, your choices, even your values, just to avoid disapproval. You read into silences, chase validation, and cling to people who make you feel enough one moment and invisible the next. It's exhausting, and worse, it's dangerous. Because sooner or later, you forget who you are without them. You stop standing for anything solid. You become whoever they want you to be, just to avoid the sting of being ignored. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus once said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinion about them." And that includes people's reactions. Their coldness doesn't define your worth. Their silence isn't proof you've failed. Their approval is not the source of your value. Strength means being grounded in your own values, no matter who's watching. When someone disrespects you, you don't crumble. You stay calm, because their opinion is not your mirror. When someone praises you, you appreciate it, but you don't become addicted to it. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Natalie, used to let people's moods control her entire day. If someone complimented her, she felt radiant. If someone dismissed her, she spiraled into self-doubt. It reached a point where she couldn't tell if she liked something because she truly valued it, or because someone else did. One day, after being ghosted by a friend she had always gone out of her way for, Natalie finally asked herself, "Why do I give so much power to people who don't even see me clearly?" That was the turning point. She began anchoring her sense of worth in her own principles, not in compliments, not in attention, not in temporary connections. And the peace that followed, that was real strength. So how do you stay strong? First, stop making other people the judge of your value. Second, stop chasing reactions to validate your existence. And third, build your identity on what you know to be true, your values, your actions, your integrity. Because at the end of the day, if someone's behavior can shake your worth, it wasn't rooted deep enough. Strength isn't about being admired, it's about being unshakable, even when no one's watching. Number 2. Avoiding conflict at all costs. Let's talk about a mistake that masquerades as kindness but slowly corrodes your inner strength. You want to stay strong, but when you avoid conflict at all costs, you don't create peace. You just delay the storm. Every unspoken truth, every swallowed frustration, every fake smile in the face of disrespect quietly builds pressure. You tell yourself you're keeping the peace, but really, you're trading your voice for temporary comfort. And each time you do, a part of you begins to believe that your feelings are less important than someone else's convenience. Avoiding conflict doesn't mean you're calm, it means you're carrying the weight of words unsaid. You walk away from conversations you needed to have. You nod when you want to disagree. You forgive without healing and agree without conviction, not because you don't see the problem, but because you're afraid of being seen as difficult, emotional, or confrontational. But here's what most people miss. Conflict avoided is not conflict resolved. It's conflict postponed, and the longer it stays buried, the deeper it cuts when it resurfaces. This is where Stoic wisdom steps in like a mirror. Seneca said, "Peace is not found in avoidance, but in the courage to face what is." Real strength isn't in silence. It's in choosing your words with calm clarity and saying them when they matter, not to attack, but to bring truth into the space. A difficult conversation, handled with integrity, can restore more peace than 100 quiet tolerances. Because when you speak up, you don't just honor yourself, you give the relationship a chance to be real, not just polite. Let me tell you about someone I know. Her name's Michelle. For years, she avoided confronting her boss about constantly being overlooked. She told herself it wasn't worth the trouble, that she was being dramatic, that patience would be rewarded. But with every month, her confidence shrank. She became bitter, quieter, less herself. One day, after yet another meeting where her ideas were ignored, she requested a one-on-one. And for the first time, she calmly laid everything out, not with anger, but with truth. To her surprise, her boss apologized. He genuinely hadn't realized how often he dismissed her input. The dynamic changed after that, not perfectly, but permanently. And Michelle? She walked out of that meeting taller, not because she got what she wanted, but because she finally stopped hiding her truth. So how do you stay strong? First, recognize that silence isn't peace, it's often fear. Second, remember that speaking truth doesn't make you unkind. It makes you honest. And finally, know this. Avoiding conflict might keep things quiet, but only courage can make them right. The strongest people don't run from discomfort. They face it with calm, clarity, and truth. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 3. Letting temporary emotions shape permanent decisions. Let's talk about one of the fastest ways to sabotage your strength. You want to stay strong, but when you let temporary emotions dictate your permanent decisions, you surrender your power in the most silent and irreversible way. That rush of anger, that surge of panic, that moment of wounded pride, all of it feels urgent, overwhelming, and real. But none of it lasts. And yet the choices we make while riding that emotional wave can last years. You slam a door that can't be reopened. You say something that can't be unsaid. You quit, explode, retaliate. Then later, all that's left is silence, shame, and a truth that hits harder than the emotion ever did. You were never in control. Your emotions were. The strongest people don't deny emotion. They master their response to it. They feel the anger, but wait before they speak. They feel the fear, but choose not to run. They feel the need to react, but instead, they pause. That pause is everything, because in that stillness, you reclaim your ability to choose with clarity, not chaos. You let the wave pass before deciding where to swim. This is where Stoicism becomes a compass. Epictetus said, No man is free who is not master of himself. That means freedom doesn't come from saying or doing whatever you feel in the moment. It comes from knowing that your feelings aren't facts, they're weather. And like all weather, they pass. The Stoics believed the strongest people are not the ones who never feel. They're the ones who don't let feelings steer the ship. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him David, had spent 3 years building a small business with his closest friend. One day, during a heated disagreement over money, that friend accused David of selfishness. Hurt and insulted, David almost walked away. He started writing a text that would have ended the friendship and the partnership in one blow. But something made him stop. He sat on that message for 24 hours. The next morning, the anger had cooled. He called his friend instead and calmly explained what hurt him. That conversation ended in clarity, not collapse. Years later, that business is still running and the friendship is stronger than ever. If David had acted on emotion, he would have destroyed something meaningful. Instead, he chose to stay still when the storm inside him screamed to move. So how do you stay strong? First, recognize the storm for what it is, temporary. Second, make space between the feeling and the response. Even 10 seconds of silence can be the difference between regret and wisdom. And finally, remember, your emotions are real, but they are not rulers. You are. Don't hand over your future to a moment you won't even remember next week. Stay still. Stay strong. Choose with intention. Number 4. Breaking promises to yourself. Let's talk about one of the most damaging forms of self-betrayal. You want to stay strong, but when you keep breaking promises to yourself, that strength begins to crumble from the inside out. Each time you say, "I'll start tomorrow," and you don't. Each time you tell yourself you'll change, but then choose comfort over commitment, you send a quiet message to your mind. I can't trust me. And nothing weakens a person more than the loss of self-trust. We often treat promises to others like sacred contracts. We wouldn't dare flake on a friend, skip a job interview, or ignore a deadline at work. But when it comes to the promises we make to ourselves, we act like they don't count. We say, "It's just me, I'll let it slide." But here's the truth. The relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. When you don't keep your own word, you chip away at your confidence, your motivation, and your sense of self-worth. The strong don't just talk to themselves, they follow through, even when no one is watching. Especially when no one is watching. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes a mirror. Epictetus said, "First, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's the formula. First, be honest about who you want to become. Then, treat your daily actions like stepping stones toward that version of you. It's not about being perfect, it's about being consistent, because every small promise you keep builds trust. Every small promise you break, it eats away at it. Let me tell you about someone named Rachel. She used to tell herself she'd wake up early and write for 30 minutes each morning. A small promise, nothing grand. But every morning, when the alarm rang, she'd hit snooze and say, "Tomorrow." Weeks passed, then months. The guilt started piling up, not because she missed the writing, but because she hated the feeling of letting herself down. One day, she changed everything. She didn't set a 2-hour goal. She didn't make it dramatic. She simply said, 10 minutes, every morning, no matter what. And she did it. 10 minutes turned into 30. The habit stuck, not because she had superhuman discipline, but because she finally made keeping her word to herself non-negotiable. That small change, it shifted her entire identity. So how do you stay strong? First, make smaller promises, ones you know you can keep. Second, treat those promises like you would if you'd made them to someone you deeply respect. And finally, Don't chase motivation, chase integrity. Because when you keep showing up for yourself, you build the kind of strength no one can see, but you feel it every day. That's real strength, the quiet kind, the kind that lasts. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a thank God and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 5, giving people more chances than they deserve. Let's talk about one of the most quietly self-destructive habits you can fall into. You want to stay strong, but every time you give someone another chance after they've shown you who they are, without any effort to grow or change, you're not choosing kindness. You're choosing to abandon yourself. There's a line between compassion and self-neglect, and far too often, people cross it thinking they're being noble. But strong people understand this. Forgiveness doesn't mean re-inviting chaos. You tell yourself, maybe they'll get better, or they didn't mean it. And with each excuse, you hand them more access to your time, your energy, your peace. But here's the truth. The strongest souls are not the ones who keep enduring hurt for the sake of loyalty. They're the ones who forgive quietly and then step away firmly. Why? Because they know growth isn't real unless it's followed by changed behavior. And if someone isn't willing to do the work to be better, they don't deserve another seat at your table. This is where Stoic wisdom clears the fog. Seneca said, "To be merciful is good, but to be wise is essential." You can still be merciful in your heart, wish them well, hope they grow. But wisdom says, don't keep reopening doors that only lead to pain. Mercy doesn't mean forgetting. And strength doesn't mean tolerating the same disrespect in new disguises. Let me tell you about someone named David. He had a childhood friend, let's call him Eric, who constantly took advantage of his generosity, borrowed money, made empty promises, took credit for shared ideas. Each time, David forgave him, gave him another chance. And each time, Eric proved he hadn't changed. One day, David realized that the real issue wasn't Eric's behavior, it was his own unwillingness to enforce consequences. So David did something he'd never done before. He didn't argue, he didn't explain, he simply created space, and that distance gave him clarity. Peace doesn't come from keeping everyone close, it comes from keeping the right people close. So, if you want to stay strong, remember this. Forgiveness is your gift to yourself, but access is something people earn. If someone continues to show you they haven't grown, believe them. Stop hoping they'll change and start honoring the boundaries you said you'd hold. It's not cruel, it's wise. Your strength isn't measured by how much you can endure. It's measured by how deeply you protect your peace. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for both of you is to let go. Number 6, wasting time on things you can't control. Let's talk about one of the quietest ways we lose our power. You want to stay strong, but you keep pouring your energy into things you'll never be able to control. You argue with the past. You obsess over what someone might do, what they might think, how something might turn out. And in doing so, you waste your most valuable resource, your focus. Because while your mind is tangled up in things outside your influence, the life you can actually shape is passing you by. Here's the hard truth. Strength doesn't come from controlling every outcome. It comes from accepting that you can't. You try to force closure, manipulate timing, replay old conversations, hoping they'll end differently in your head. But the more you chase control, the more anxious you become. Why? Because your mind was never designed to wrestle fate. The moment you stop trying to edit reality and start focusing on your role in it, that's when your strength returns. This is why Stoic wisdom still matters. Epictetus said, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." That's not just philosophy, it's freedom. Because when you finally accept that you don't need to know everything, fix everything, or win every battle to have peace, you stop chasing chaos and start anchoring yourself in what's actually yours to manage: your thoughts, your choices, your attitude. Let me tell you about someone named Sarah. She had just ended a long relationship that left her with more questions than answers. Her ex moved on quickly, no explanation, no apology. Sarah spent months trying to make sense of it, checking social media, rereading old texts, replaying moments in her head. She wasn't looking for love, she was looking for closure. But the truth was, the closure she wanted wasn't hers to get. So one day, she made a decision. She deleted the messages, blocked the social channels, and most importantly, she stopped asking, why? Instead, she started asking, what now? What can I control? What do I do with this pain? How do I grow from here? That shift in focus was the beginning of her real healing. So, if you want to stay strong, stop giving your power to things you can't touch. Fate doesn't negotiate, and closure doesn't always come with answers. But peace does come when you release the obsession and return your focus inward. Control your breath, control your words, control your path. Let life do what it will, but let your response be yours alone. That is real strength. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 7. Dimming your light to make others comfortable. Let's talk about one of the most subtle ways you give up your power. You want to stay strong, but you keep dimming your own light so others won't feel insecure. You lower your voice when you have something bold to say. You hesitate before sharing your achievements. You act unsure of what you know, just to avoid the risk of making someone else feel small. And while it may feel like kindness in the moment, it slowly chips away at your confidence. Because every time you shrink yourself for others' comfort, you teach your mind that your truth, your power, your presence is too much. This isn't humility, this is self-abandonment. The strong don't shrink to fit in, they expand, even when it makes others uncomfortable. You weren't meant to walk on eggshells in your own life. And the people who are threatened by your growth were never your supporters to begin with. They were measuring their worth against your silence. And when you start to rise, it reminds them of how little they've moved. That discomfort is theirs to deal with, not yours to solve. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, stop apologizing for who you are becoming. Stop waiting for permission to be great. Strength is not about being palatable to everyone. It's about being aligned with your values even when it makes others uncomfortable. You don't have to be loud, you just have to be real. Let me tell you about someone named Brian. In college, Brian was naturally gifted, sharp thinker, strong communicator. But every time he spoke up in class, a few classmates would roll their eyes or crack jokes behind his back. So he started staying quiet. He dumbed down his answers. He acted like he didn't care. He blended in. But deep down, it felt like betrayal. Years later, in his first job, a mentor pulled him aside and said, "You've got something rare, but you hide it like it's a flaw." That hit him hard. It forced him to ask, who am I really protecting by pretending to be less? And why does their comfort matter more than my integrity? If you want to stay strong, stop apologizing for the space you take up. Speak with clarity. Own your skills. Let your light be too much for the people who are still hiding in their shadow. You weren't put here to be easy to digest. You were put here to live boldly, to lead quietly, and to walk without shrinking. Let others adjust to your light, not the other way around. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely reply.